Welcome to the lesson on nouns, articles, adjectives in Spanish. Spanish nouns are the fundamental piece of the language. All Spanish nouns have gender and number. And by gender, I refer to some nouns being masculine and other nouns being feminine. When I say number, I'm referring to whether that noun is singular or plural. Now we can determine the gender and number of nouns based upon their endings. The ending of a noun will tell us, most of the time, whether it's masculine or feminine. This information is important when determining what type of article we may need to place in front of the noun, or when modifying an adjective to match up to the noun. We need to be able to memorize and identify which nouns are masculine and which are feminine. So to the right we have some charts. The most common masculine endings end in O and os. For feminine, a and as. We learned that in Spanish 1, but in Spanish 2 we need to move beyond just o, os, a, as to find out some other endings that are guaranteed to be masculine or some other endings that are guaranteed to be feminine. Any noun that ends in ema or ima, or the plural version, ema, emas, ima, imas, is masculine. So we can no longer just decide that because it ends in an a, it's feminine. If it happens to be ema or ima, those are masculine nouns. Likewise, if it ends in e, we can't say it's guaranteed to be masculine or feminine. We have to look a little further. If it's aje, aje, or the plural ajes, it's guaranteed to be masculine. So here are some masculine nouns. Gato, gatos. Problema, problemas. Clima, climas. Garaje, garajes. Now the feminine nouns have more routine endings. In addition to a, as, if it ends in ad, ood, or the plural ades, udes, those are guaranteed to be feminine endings. The feminine ending ion with an accent mark over the o is also feminine. In its plural form, it loses the accent mark. Ion, iones. And lastly, if a noun ends in ie, again, the e ending cannot tell us one way or another. We have to look a little further. If it is ie or ies, the plural form, ie, ies, those are feminine nouns. So here are some examples. Casa, casas. Ciudad, ciudades. Altitud, altitudes. Nación, naciones. Serie, series. Now that we know how to identify the gender and number of a noun, we can adequately work with articles or adjectives. The first thing we'll start with is Spanish articles. Spanish articles precede the noun they're modifying, but they must match up with their noun in both gender and number. So if the noun is masculine, the article will be masculine. If the noun is plural, the article will be plural. Articles must always be present at the beginning of a sentence. Unless you're starting a sentence with a proper noun, you must have an article in front of any other noun. So in English, even though I say verbs are difficult in Spanish, and I don't need an article, in Spanish I do. Los verbos son difíciles en español. But if I start my sentence with a proper noun, Paul is a good student, I do not need an article. Pablo es un buen alumno. Now there are two types of articles in Spanish. The definite article, which means the indefinite article, which means a, an, or in its plural form, some. Each of these articles have 4 different forms. 1 to match up with the masculine singular, 1 to match up with the masculine plural, 1 to match up with the feminine singular, and 1 to match up with the feminine plural. For definite articles, or 4 ways of saying the word the, we have el, los, la, las. 2 ways of saying a or an, un, una. And the 2 ways to say some, unos, unas. Now, articles are special because they don't follow the rules that we associate with them in English. Definite articles are used almost all the time. Even when we wouldn't say the word the in English, we use a definite article in front of a noun in Spanish. The opposite occurs with indefinite articles. They're hardly ever used. Generally, we only use the words un, unos, una, unas when an adjective is present to denote quantity or to start a sentence. Otherwise, indefinite articles are not that popular. Now, the other reason why identifying the gender and the number of a noun was important is because adjectives must also follow suit with the noun they modify. So adjectives must also have the same number, singular or plural, and the same gender, masculine and feminine, in most cases. Most adjectives are actually going to come after the noun. Articles go in front, adjectives come after. This makes translating into English a little bit difficult because we have to flip around the order. There are a few adjectives that will come in front of the noun, but those are adjectives that indicate quantity, that are ordinal numbers, first, second, third, or the words mejor, peor, último. Those are the few circumstances where we'll put the adjective in front of the noun, but 9 times out of 10, it goes after. Now, adjectives do have to match up to their noun, and what's even more important is if our adjective is a nationality, even if it follows a rule that does not have gender, nationalities trump that rule. All nationalities have gender, even if they end in a consonant. When talking adjectives, we have 5 types of adjectives, and this is based on how their main form or their base form looks. Most adjectives end in O, parentheses, A. These would be your adjectives like bonito, rojo, guapo. These adjectives have 4 different endings, based upon the 4 different options of nouns. O, os, a, as. And it relates to masculine singular, masculine plural, feminine singular, and feminine plural. There are another type of adjective that also has 4 different forms, and these are adjectives that in their base form end in dor, like trabajador, hablador. These also have 4 different forms, dor, dores, dora, doras, respective of gender and number. There's a whole nother side to adjectives in which gender is not important, only singular versus plural. These are with adjectives that end in e, ista, or a consonant. An adjective like verde or inteligente has 2 forms, verde, verdes. An ista adjective like deportista, optimista, pesimista, well, that only has 2 forms as well, deportista, deportistas. And this becomes troublesome when modifying a masculine noun. A lot of people want to turn the A to an O, but that cannot happen. Ista adjectives have 2 forms, ista, istas, period. Now our consonant adjectives, they can end in any consonant. Azul, marrón, español, any type of adjective that ends in a consonant has a singular and plural form. The base is the singular form, azul. When we make it plural, we add es, azules. Marrón, singular form, marrones, plural form. Now the only exception to this consonant rule would be nationalities, because nationalities would bump to the front of the chart and be treated like an OA adjective even when they're not. Now it's time for you to show me what you've learned in this lesson. Answer the questions that you see below and see in class.